Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
Today, we're doing
A super episode.
a super duper episode. This one is this is considered from comics stores and aficionados and everybody that I've ever spoken to, like one of the best comics ever written. Like, especially for like a maxi series, like it's 12 issues. It's its own thing. It's not like an ongoing thing. So everybody considers this like pretty high status. So we did All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and who we've done one of their books before. They did We Three together. Right. So same team, same great artwork. So we don't need to really like push that anymore. Although this is different. This is different than We Three, because We Three was all animals.
Yeah.
So this is all people for the most part. And it is a divisive style with people, I think, when he draws people. Because I have a friend who has said that she hates Frank Quitely's people, like when he draws humans, because like he's drawing superheroes. Like he's drawn X-Men and stuff too. And they look all soft and not muscular, and that's true. They definitely have more like kind of fluff and wrinkles to them. They're all rounded and not like hard edged or whatever.
I kind of like it though. Like especially, I really love
and
for
this story,
look. Yeah,
for this story specifically too, it is a good look, I think.
Yeah, like I love Superman's look in this too. Like it's not like an awesome costume like Red Sun. Like that's like my favorite probably Superman costume.
Right.
But like this Superman, I just like I look at him, I'm like, man, that's Superman. I feel it. Like
you know what?
He's my savior in this comic.
I feel it too, because my first exposure to this comic was kind of like, I think it was the same day or maybe the same month as Planet Hulk. Like when I first got back into comics and I like moved here and I was like, oh, a comic book store, and I walked in on a whatever day it was, and I was like, what's good? And then on the rack there was this like Superman sitting on a cloud, and he looked kind of like not stone chiseled. He just kind of looked like, he's peaceful, looking at stuff, looking at the sunset or whatever, smiling, kind of wondering in his thoughts off in the distance. And I was like, that's cool looking. Like it looks different, like every other Superman story I've ever seen. He's just like, he's got a mullet. And he's got, because this is back then. In my mind, Superman was still in the 90s. So he had a mullet, or he had like John Lennon glasses and a cool jean jacket or whatever. And, he's punching stuff. Like that's what he does. And he's always like super buff. So this was like a cool, it was different enough that I caught my eye, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. And I read it, and I was like, the art is so different. Like I didn't know what to think of it at the time. Like it was the first time I'd seen Frank Quitely's stuff. So, like there wasn't like a conscious like, oh, I know who that is and it's amazing. It was just like, it's so different that it caught my eye, and it really made me like, wow, that's cool, And then I didn't know who Grant Morrison was. I just happened to pick up one of the best writers or whatever, randomly on the first day, and then was like, cool. So this is what every comic's like, huh? Amazing art and amazing writing. Wow. And now I know exactly what to expect in every comic I read after this. So, but that was issue 1. I don't know. It was like the same week it came out. Like I just got, and I bought both covers too, because there was like a Neil Adams cover that was a little more action centered or whatever. So it was like him flying through the sun or whatever. So I was like, oh, that's cool too, because that one sparked more like the 90s vibe of it or whatever. So, but yeah, this comic is basically like a what if Superman dies, or like what would Superman do in his last days if he knew he was going to die. So like that's what this book presupposes. So it is like it's Superman doing his bucket list kind of before he leaves. Also, this is a very issue centric way of telling the story. So like it's very specifically feels really good in issue form. And then as a whole, it just feels like it's a little long or parts are a little fatty. You could remove stuff or explain things better or whatever. So, what was your first exposure to this?
I remember when I was getting back in the comics, right around when we started hanging out initially. Like I was reading like everything. I just thought that looked cool. Right?
Every Aquaman.
Yeah, and I was reading. I was reading some Aquaman, which was a good Aquaman.
I'm sure it was.
But yeah, it was the same time that Aquaman
was that
series,
the Jeff Johns Aquaman?
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay.
I think so. It's the same time that the Civil War was going on.
Okay, so it was like 2006.
So yeah, so that
2000.
look at that around that time.
Yeah.
But so yeah, but I was like, oh, that looks like a cool story. I'm just gonna pick that up. And then I think you had probably said like, oh yeah, it was good. You should read that. And I remember getting a trade of it, or maybe 2 trades. I think it was.
Yeah, it was separated into 6 issues because there was so much time in between. They're like, well, just get the first 6 out in a trade, and then the second 6.
So, and I may have done the same. So I may have bought one and been like, oh man, that was really good. Like, and like I said, I would say right now, from an art standpoint, this is my favorite comic of all time.
Yes.
From the art standpoint, I loved it. And then, so I bought one trade, and I was like, oh, that was really good. And then I bought the second one, and I was like, oh man, this is my favorite comic. And it's still like, again, our point, this is my favorite comic of all time. From the story point, after going and rereading it, there's definitely it feels like one of the most amazing albums that you've ever listened to, with like
where you don't quite get everything.
Yeah, that or just like 2 or 3 like, oh man, that's kind of like a filler track. Damn, this was like almost perfect.
Yeah,
and
that's a good way to put it. Where you're like, oh man, that's weird that this one song's there. It's not a terrible song. It's just like weird, or it doesn't fit the whole thing or something. You know,
it's like an amazing concept album with like they try to put in that one like radio jam in the middle, and you're like, oh well, that doesn't fit like the whole.
Although this is the ones that don't fit aren't not
the radio jams. They're the weird ones.
Yeah,
but this is the first comic that I bought an absolute of.
Oh yes.
So like I was like this.
Did you read this absolute?
Yeah.
Okay, I did too. We both have the absolute of this, and
I do not. So Matt is the hardcore comic nerd. He grew up with it more. He got back into comics, and then he worked at the comic book shop, and so he was able to
breathe it.
Yes. So like I read a lot in the 90s because my mom bought me comics that she thought I would like, and then I would go with her and I would get to pick some out.
Good Archie stuff.
Well, no, she bought me like 90s Spider-Man and 90s Superman. Like, so I saw the death of Superman. But then when I got back into comics around when we were hanging out more, and like I said, Civil War came out, and I mean, I pretty much read from like the end of Winter Soldier through Civil War through World War Hulk, and through that main line of stories. And like I said, I was just kind of reading things that I was like, oh, that looks cool, and then hopefully the story was good. But the thing I'm saying is, for a teenager, dropping $60 on a hardcore collection of the comic was like, that was huge for me.
$60.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it on sale then, because it's $100 book.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, that's where I'm going with it. Is that like predisposed? I already loved this comic from the first time I read it. Going through it, I have some more thoughts, and I'm glad that we revisited it. But
yeah, I know we mentioned it in like, I don't know, the first couple issues or the first couple episodes of this podcast. We were like, well, there's always absolute or All-Star Superman, and we're like, wait, we don't know if that one's good. Like, we haven't read it for a long time. We're assuming it's good because we remember it being good, but so yeah, okay, fuck it. Enough talking about how awesome this book was when we were younger, and now we're going to talk about how awesome it is now that we're older. So, but yeah, so this book, like we said, it's 12 issues. The first issue, I'll say the first 6 issues, like the first trade of this, must have been fucking amazing. Because like reading that all together at once, it's 6 of the best, strongest issues you could possibly have for a comic. The first issue is, it starts off and like there's a scientist who is trying to get a sample of the sun for some reason. His name is Dr. Quintum. And he's just a weird dude. I don't know exactly. Like, I wasn't sure if he was supposed to be a bad guy or whatever when I first read it, because he's just a new character. No one knows who he was or anything. But he had like a rainbow coat, and it was just like an odd guy, like an Elon Musk type or something, And he had he just had Joseph's Technicolor rainbow jacket or whatever, and like he's trying to get a sample of the sun for some reason, and all of a sudden he's like, Jim, did you get that thing? And all of a sudden there's like the Jim or whoever, it was like this big robot or something, or this small robot. He starts like puffing up really big, and he's like, what's going on? He's like, I'm about to explode. I'm actually a bomb, and like I was programmed to explode once we got to a certain point or whatever. And it turns out Lex Luthor has planted a bomb, or like made this robot a bomb. I don't know if it's a robot or a person. I assumed it was a robot.
Because he has like these like robotic kind of like spiky antennas out of his back, but then he has all this like fleshy monster looking goo on him.
So I wasn't 100%. That's the other thing.
He's a creature.
Like this doesn't hold your hand at all. Like you're just thrown into this story. There's weird stuff that isn't in other Superman books, so you're just supposed to like take it at face value and run with it, So like this is one of those things where you're just supposed to take it and run with it. So there's a guy who's, I guess, a robot potentially, because all his other servants and stuff are robots. All the doctors, even the girl that's his like assistant, she's like a robot or a clone or something.
Something, yeah.
So that guy's about to explode, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna die!" And then Superman comes, and they're really really close to the sun. So Superman comes in. We all know Superman. If you didn't know, he gets charged by the sun, so generally not a bad thing that he's by the sun. And then he goes into the ship. He pulls the robot that's about to explode out, and then it explodes. He like throws it towards the sun. It explodes, and I wasn't sure if it was the sun itself or because of the explosion and everything. That's what caused this. But basically, Superman, his cells get super irradiated from the sun, and so much so that he's not just strong anymore. It's like his cells are exploding because they can't handle how much power it is. So he like basically he gets like cancer or whatever. Like he gets skin cancer or whatever, but like really bad. Super skin cancer. But at first he just feels super charged. He has some extra powers. He gets electric powers, just like when he died and came back in the 90s. So
yeah, he's like pulling the ship out, and they're like, oh, there's like they're just like quick explanations, like, oh, he's like his electromagnetic field is like pulsing from around him,
and they don't really explain anything. They're just like, oh, he's got a new power all of a sudden. Oh, okay. And then as a reader, you're just like, all right, I guess so.
Yeah, and then like they're checking him out, and he's like lifting some metal like rod or whatever, and they're like testing his strength. And they're like, you've lifted like the strongest
400,000 tons. Yeah, or something.
Known to like exist.
Yeah. So like basically they say you're gonna die soon, but for the time being you're like Superman. You're like extra Superman. So you're gonna be able to do a lot right now early, but eventually you will die like pretty soon. Yeah. Let's say in a month or two or something.
I did like he said like, oh yeah, he like zoomed in.
He can like zoom in into his skin,
and he's like, oh man, yeah, I see my like little explosions on my skin. And I was like, oh wow, that was
so you can actually like see himself dying like in real time or whatever, which is interesting. And then because of this, he's like, okay, like no more fucking around. Like we said, it's kind of like a bucket list kind of thing. Like he's got to figure out how he's going to leave the world without a Superman. So he's trying to like figure out how to make Superman or like leave Earth with some kind of protector. And in that process, also one of the things he's got to do is tell Lois that he is Superman. So basically he does that. He's like, he goes up and he's like, is he dressed as Clark when he does it?
Yeah, so he like makes it back to the Daily Planet right before Clark's about to get fired for whatever
for being late or whatever. Yeah.
And he's like, no, stop the presses. And he's all, I love like that the Kill Bill explanation of like how Superman views the world, so he's like kind of bumbling and like I love that that's how like that he is perfect Clark Kent in this of like whoa like
right.
just
I find it insulting because that's how he thinks we are.
I mean I can see, I understand that, but I like
I'm just a dumb Earthman. I'm falling over.
Yeah, like falling over his non-existent shoelaces or like
he's wearing loafers. He's like, oh, I tripped on my shoelace.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he gets there, and then
he gets he finds out he's going to interview Lex Luthor or whatever. What's it?
Right. Yeah. Well, so Lex Luthor, like we said, was behind this. So they find out Lex Luthor's behind it, and they're like, okay, we have to arrest him because he was released on probation or something, like for good behavior. And then it turned out, no, he did this thing. So they arrest him, and then he's supposed to like go to jail or whatever, or go to on trial. And so like when he's about to leave with Lois, he's like, Lois, I have to tell you something. And then I think he just like opens up his shirt, right?
Yeah, he's like walking her home, and like they apparently they visit like a grocery store, and she's like just talking or whatever. He's like, Lois, no, let me tell you something. She's like, whatever, Clark, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah,
blah,
he
blah,
like
blah.
keeps trying to be like, I need to tell you something, and she's just not having any of it.
Yeah, and that was a good panel. The last panel is like, Lois, listen, and it's the shirt opening up,
rips the shirt
and
open.
you see the like she drops her groceries or whatever.
Yeah, you do see like fruit falling.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So. And then so it's right away. Issue 2 picks up right after that, and like it shows her like it looks. You think she's driving, but then it actually turns out that Superman's just flying underneath her car, and she's like thinking in her head like, how can this be? There's no way that Clark Kent could be. Like this in this issue. I really liked this issue. Really, like it's all about Lois, and it's all in her head and like how she thinks, and it's very interesting because also. It's how she thinks, but then some stuff happens, and it's like how crazy she can be and like neurotic and stuff too. So, but like he's like, no, I'm like for real, it isn't me, and she's like, it can't be you. Like, there's no way that you're a stupid Clark Kent, like, but because you're Superman, and you're so perfect and amazing. There's no way that you could be Clark Kent. He's a fucking idiot or whatever. And like in so many words like that, she keeps. It's so unbelievable to her that if he takes off his glasses. He becomes a different person, like, and so she's like brings her to the Fortress of Solitude to like show her around, basically.
That's my one of my favorite parts was when they get there and like he's like, okay, we'll go, and she's like, oh, you don't have a big like.
Well, he used to have a giant key,
yeah.
like one that, like I don't know, was big as a football field or something, and then he's like, it was so annoying, and it seemed like easy to steal or whatever, so I just got this one. And it's like a little one.
It looks like a house key.
Yeah. And then he picks it up. He says, oh, it's actually like the heaviest metal known to man or whatever. And only I can pick it up kind of thing. So, and then he puts that in the key and unlocks it.
And she, go ahead and try to lift it, Lois.
Yeah. And she can't at all. So, it's kind of like Thor's hammer or whatever.
Yeah.
They all try to lift it up or whatever. But, and then like we see, okay, there's a bunch of robots in the Fortress of Solitude. We kind of, if you've ever watched Superman stuff, you kind of know that or seen other stuff in his comics. He's got like a bunch of robots that help him out in the fortress and whatnot. And then it's weird because this was kind of like I've never seen this before, but they gave him like a bat cave where like he's got everything he's ever fought or whatever. Like he just has little mementos.
Yeah.
So instead of like it's a Soup's cave or whatever, like he's got a big dinosaur and a whatever
spaceship.
Not that, but like he's got a space. He's got one of the spaceships. I assume he like saved one in the issue that was important or something.
And then he had a statue of his folks and
and he had like a laser that was like a kryptonite laser and stuff. And so he's showing her around, and you're kind of like, and she's in her mind, she's just constantly talking to herself, like trying to figure out stuff, trying to unveil what's going on. She thinks like Superman's tricking her, like of course because Clark Kent can't be Superman, and so she's trying to like deduce everything or like find the hidden meaning and all this stuff. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like,
no, I'm just trying to be honest with you.
Be honest and show you shit. And like he shows her, there's like a sun eater pet that he has, or like it was weird. There's like, so it's like a pit, or it's like I don't know. It's like a room where in the middle of it is this giant like sun eater. It's like a monster that eats suns. But apparently it's not evil or anything. It just needs to eat.
No, it's because it's a baby.
Oh, okay, it's a baby.
Yeah, he's like, I found it, and so I brought it here to take care of it.
As you do, like as you would take it.
He like takes his hammer, is like shield drives or whatever, and like he pounds this little thing on.
It's like a mini sun or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's got some kind of like ball that looks like a mini sun that's the size of like a softball.
He's like,
and he like picks it up with a hammer and anvil, and like little flakes come off of it, and he's like, oh, there you go, like it's fish food or something.
Yeah.
And he like feeds the sun eater, which is interesting. So he shows her that, and then there's like a room that's like, do not enter. Danger.
You can go anywhere in this place
but
except here.
Yeah, and then
So
of course
she's gonna try to go there.
Fucking Lois can't keep her nose out of areas.
Yeah. She like I guess they're like, you can get ready if we're gonna have dinner, and she like showers, and she's like, again, she's thinking to herself, and she gets out, and he's like, here, I got you flowers from Alpha Centauri, whatever planet,
close enough,
and they're like singing flowers or something.
So he's just trying to be like super romantic and try to like
he's really trying.
Yeah, he's trying. And then she like is like, oh, I have to go do something or whatever, and then she goes off and she wanders into that room and sees like robot named Number 7, and he's like doing something, but she sees on the computer there's like it kind of looks like the Da Vinci Man or whatever, like what's that called, the man that's like divvied up in
I know
sections.
exactly what you're talking about. I can't think of it.
Vitruvian Man, that's what it is. So it looks like kind of like that, but it's her. And she's like, what the hell are they going to do to me? Superman's going to kill me or whatever. Something wrong is going to happen. So she like starts going kind of crazy. And like you said, we were talking about this. You were like, oh, where she was like, oh, he's going to make me have his super babies or something. And she just gets more and more like freaked out and
super paranoid.
Yeah, very paranoid. Like she was smoking something or whatever. But she did not. And, so she comes to the point in paranoia where she's like really freaking out, and she starts like, he's gonna come around and he's gonna murder me, he's gonna kill me. And so she like goes back to the trophy room where he was showing her all the weapons and stuff, and she takes that kryptonite gun, and then he opens a door to be like, hey Lois, and then she like shoots him with it, and he's like, huh, I guess I'm immune to kryptonite now because of my newfound
that just
sun
tickles.
Powers. Yeah, that was a weird way to find that out. Luckily for you, I didn't die, Lois. But then he's like, oh, I see. You're like crazy right now, because turns out, and he like takes her into the room where like the Vitruvian Man picture of her was. And it was like, it turns out the Robot 7 was making a serum for her to be like, happy birthday or whatever. Like,
it's like, I'm sorry it took so long, but like memorizing your genetic sequence takes a while.
And which is kind of creepy.
Yeah,
and then
a little weird, but okay, Superman.
It turns out he was making her like a serum to be super powered for one day, and so that's what he was gonna do. And he like made her like a costume and everything, and that's what like the Vitruvian Man of her was like,
measurements.
It's all the measurements of like her
indestructible suit.
Yeah. Which was made of, I can't remember what it was made of, but it had to have special needles that like sewed through it and everything. So, but yeah, so then she's like, oh, dummy me. Like, and it turns out what happened was the serum that Robot 7 was making, he's the one who left the door open on accident. And apparently the fumes from that create extreme paranoia in humans. And so all of like the half of that issue was just her that was exposed to that stuff going crazy like in her mind. But it was fun to read. It was fun to read all of that though. Yeah. So
there was also like some time telescope thing that Superman showed, and it was like he can see.
Oh yeah.
And he like basically almost anything in the future, so he can hopefully help stop things before they happen.
Yeah, it was like he could talk to other Supermen in future. Like they're like so one Superman came in and it was like, help me. It was like he couldn't. He was like going in and out. And he's like, something's gonna happen in the 14th century of the sun or whatever. And it's like, oh shit, okay, well, we don't know exactly what's going on there, but something bad is obviously happening, 100 billion years into the future or whatever. So
yeah, and then they met like Cal something, and it basically was like, he kind of looks like you and kind of like me a little bit. It was like, that's weird.
Yeah,
I think that was part of the like, what's he? Is he trying to make super babies or something?
Yeah. And then there's one that had like face wrapped like Hush or whatever. It was all like bandaged and everything. So the
unknown Superman.
Yeah, it was some like creepy stuff. So anywho, so yeah, he that was part of that issue too, and it comes up later, so that's why we're kind of bringing that one up. But then issue 3 is about her being super for the day, which is, this one's a really fun issue too.
Yeah.
She like drinks the serum and then she gets to like have 24 hours of Superman powers. And of course she's like, oh, like we got to stop monsters and shit like right away. And luckily there's like a weird dinosaur person that's like attacking Metropolis.
Krull.
Yeah, Krull.
I imagine him talking like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm a snake. Krull. He's like a lizard person.
Yeah.
Whatever. And apparently he's from like the center of the earth, and there's like a dinosaur kingdom in the middle of the earth for some reason. And I don't know if this is like lore.
It's like old 50s.
I was gonna say it has to be because Grant Morrison always likes to throw in weird golden age stuff.
This is 100% an old like.
Yes, this is his homage to like weird golden age Superman stuff. Before he knew he was gonna be able to write more of this stuff. So, and so he's like, Krull is attacking. Then right when they're about to take him on,
sorry.
This other guy shows up and beats the shit out of Krull, and his name is Samson. And I guess he's supposed to be like the biblical character, who I didn't know is actually like a DC superhero of some kind. But
I guess it's like Hercules in Marvel or whatever. That's what I put it to.
I guess, but he's like, he was actually the one from the Bible because he's like, my hair is my only weakness or whatever. But it was him, and then his buddy Atlas shows up, and they're both like, ha ha. Like, we want to date Lois Lane, and we will be new beau and everything.
Yeah, I like their like strongman suitors. Like, whoa.
Yeah, and they like totally drew them exactly as dumb and big and everything as you would think they would be. And so it turns out like they kind of challenge Superman. Well, they tell Superman, hey, we know something's going to happen.
We can time travel, and we know that something's going to happen to you. So all's fair in love and war, basically.
Yeah, like we're going to try to, get with or like get in her good graces right now while you're still alive. And then eventually we will, when you're dead, then she'll have to choose one of us, of course, because we're just as strong and awesome. And they also say like, oh, in Superman, you're going to do 12 feats of like crazy strength or something before you die. So like they set up that for sure. Like this, the rest of this is like him. He does, in through all this do 12. I think it's 12. Is it 12?
Yeah, I think so.
12 feats of strength. So, but first they go down and they're like, the way Samson defeats Krull is he throws him into space, which I was like, he just murdered.
Yeah, no, Superman's like, hold on, I'll be right back. I just heard his lungs explode.
Yeah, to which I was like, well, then he's fucking dead, right? Because you can't.
Maybe lizard
you can't
people
live without lungs.
It's a lizard. He can regrow it, maybe.
Okay, maybe.
That was my assumption.
But anyway, so they're like, oh, this is like the prince of the lizard people. We got to take him back and like.
So Samson beats Krull, and then Atlas beats up like the thugs that came with Krull, and they're like, well, we've done our. So there's not much left for you to do, Superman. So I guess we win.
We won the affection of Lois, and they're like, whoa. And so then Superman's like, well, I'll go down and I'll tell, the king, we'll negotiate. And so they do. They go down there, and basically, like, Superman's talking to him, and Krull's dad's like, that boy, like, I told him, don't go up to the surface. And what does he do? Goes up to the surface or whatever. And, so, like, he's negotiating peace, basically, with this kingdom. And then Samson, I think it was Samson.
Yeah, Samson's like,
hey, check out this necklace I got you, Lois. And it's, like, super irradiated, like, it's, whatever, the worst plutonium, uranium, whatever, made of it. And like, he puts it around her neck, and it looks like a big fancy, like, big pieces of crystal, basically, around her neck. And then Superman's like, Lois, that could like totally kill you if you wear that. And she's like, but I'm super powered right now, it's fine. And he's like, okay, I guess if you want. But then it turns out that Samson and Atlas stole that necklace from
the Ultra Sphinx.
The Ultra Sphinx, who I don't know.
I never know.
But is probably a real character from the 50s.
It just made me think it felt to me like a Power Rangers villain.
Yes. Oh, totally. Like Goldar or some shit. Yeah. And he's like, and they're like, they put it on her, and they're like, oh shit, like he's already followed us here, and like basically I guess he's like tracking them through time after they stole his necklace, and so they gave it to Lois for some reason. Then like, oh, they're like, oh, he's here, and so then the Sphinx shows up and is like, I will take my necklace back, and so he like gets the necklace with Lois. And she like goes into like a limbo space of like death and life at the same time, and then like Superman's give her the fuck back, and he's like, Ultra Sphinx is like, only if you answer like my question can will she be saved or whatever.
Yeah, I liked Ultra Sphinx because he talked every word was in an individual square, and they were very ornate writing, and they gave him a very specific voice like, only I can release her if you answer my question. It was just cool. It made him seem very like
threatening, ominous.
It was cool. So
it was good. Yeah, it was a good way to do it. And so basically, it's like his question is, what happens when
the unstoppable force.
Unstoppable force meets an unmovable object.
Immovable object.
That's what I said. Close enough. And and then Superman thinks about it for a second, and he goes, "They surrender." And then the Sphinx is like, "Acceptable," or whatever, and then like gives him back Lois. I think he takes his necklace back, but he gives Lois back, and then that was it, pretty much. And then Superman's like, "That was my feat. I like did that." And then Atlas and Samson are like, "No, it's feats of strength. It's not feats of smarts or whatever." And so then they get out of the center of the earth, and they're like on some beach. And Atlas is like, "Okay, you have to do a feat of strength. So what you have to do is defeat us in an arm wrestling contest." And so Superman goes up against both of them at the same time. Samson's on his left, and Atlas is on his right. And he's got, they got their hands, and they're, so Superman's taking both of them on at the same time. And they don't know Superman's like super powered right now. Like he's ultra powered. And so right away he takes Samson on, he like breaks his arm in half. And then Samson's like a good sport about it though. He's like, "You beat me fair and square," or whatever. And then Atlas, it shows him he's got like his arms are like both in casts, and he's like, "Ha!" Like, and then then it's just like Superman and Lois, and it's like nighttime, and they're like, "Well, that was a crazy day."
The last thing they did before they went back was really cool. Actually, it was one of my favorite panels. He's like, "Now that you're with me, or whatever, there's one thing I've always wanted to do."
Oh yeah.
And he takes her to the moon, and they kiss on the moon, and just the way it was drawn is the two of them standing in the middle. She's got her leg up or whatever, like, "Oh, what a kiss," or whatever. And then they have the sun is eclipsing them in the back. It was a very, very nice,
well composed panel.
Yes.
And but I thought like, oh, they're gonna like, this is where she's gonna get pregnant or whatever, because they already alluded that. But no, they don't have sex. She's like, "I'm so tired."
And he's like, "Okay," and he puts her to bed.
Yeah, he puts her to bed, and that's the end of that issue. And so and we should say, like, some of these issues flow into each other, like directly right after. Like 1 and 2 flew in, or directly followed each other, and 3 followed pretty close too. But then some are like random vignettes in like each other's lives or whatever, and like what's going on. So they kind of jump around in time a little bit on some of these. And the 4th issue is one of those where it's all about Jimmy Olsen. It's very reminiscent about like kind of like Jimmy Olsen's pal, or Superman Jimmy Olsen's pal, or whatever, like those old 70s and 60s comics about Jimmy Olsen. And it's like, it's weird because he like it starts off and he's like going to interview Dr. Quintum about like, everything going on, or like what he's up to, kind of like Elon Musk kind of thing. Like, "Oh, what are you doing today, sir?" And in this, it's weird. Jimmy's like hip looking. He looks pretty like stylish, but also he's a dork, and he's like an idiot or whatever. So he's just as like weird and stupid as he is in the 50s and 60s comics, but also he looks more modern and stylish. So it's a little weird. Like it's kind of like more nowadays where they kind of draw, or they make him like a nerdy hipster, and like that's how that is. And this is like kind of like the first type of that Jimmy Olsen, I think, that I've read. But so he's interviewing Dr. Quantum, who was the doctor that was getting the sun sample or in the first issue. And Dr. Quantum's like, "Oh, hold on a second, Jimmy. I'm getting a call from some weird people from like another dimension. Oh, you know what? I have to take this. Like, I have to go into their dimension because they invited me, and it's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing." And so, like, he leaves, and Jimmy Olsen's like, "Oh, I guess I get to be Dr. Quantum for a day." And so, like, he puts on Dr. Quantum's multicolored jacket and then, like, goes around the Quantum office. And
he's like, "I'm just going to write about this for a day. What it's like to be him for
isn't the name of the company Projects or something,
Yeah,
right?
Projects, but all acronyms.
It's like it's an acronym for something. But yeah, so he, like, goes around and he's looking at stuff, and he's getting into all kinds of craziness. And one of the things he gets into, he's like, there's, like, a weird mine or something in this place that's, like, there's a worker, and he's on like a crane, and he's mining in the middle of this spaceship, and apparently like where he's mining is some like other universe that he's mining into, and he's like, "Oh, something heavy," and then like the crane breaks, and then Jimmy Olsen's about to fall in, So he calls Superman with his watch, his little super watch that he's got. And Superman comes calling, just like always whenever Jimmy pushes that alarm, and he goes in, and it turns out what was being mined was a piece of black kryptonite, which has not been seen before that I know of, and they call it Black K after, yeah. And Superman is like, whoa, that was crazy. I've never seen black kryptonite. Luckily, it didn't have any effect on me. And like he gets Jimmy and he puts him in the like break room, and they're talking about it. And Jimmy's like, wow, sir, that was crazy. And like Superman's like, yeah, maybe if you weren't such a fucking dumbass, Jimmy. And then like he's like, what? I think the Black K did have an effect on you, Superman. And then
he's getting very overly aggressive.
Yeah, so like basically Superman just roids out. That's what it does, I guess. It's kind of like, I don't know if you watch Smallville.
Or like Super T.
Yeah, there you go. In Smallville, there's like the red kryptonite that makes them all horny or whatever. It's kind of like that, but just the roid part of it, not the horny part of it. So
thank goodness.
But yeah, so Superman goes crazy and he starts like attacking people and stuff in Metropolis. And so Jimmy had seen a door that said Doomsday Danger on it. And so he's like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. And he like gets that and he goes to fight Superman. And at first it's like he's got like a gravity gun and some other stuff he tries to shoot Superman with. And it's not really doing anything. And then Superman sees he's got like another gun in his hand. He's like, really, Jimmy? You think you can take me on with a gun or whatever? And he's like, the gun's not for you, Superman. And he injects himself. It turns out it was like an injection gun. And he starts slowly turning into Doomsday. And it was pretty funny because like, he's got like Jimmy's hair like in the Doomsday spikes or whatever.
Ginger.
Yeah.
Doomsday.
He had like Jimmy's eyes too. And then, it was weird. They said like, oh, he's got like 15 seconds before Doomsday completely takes control of his body. And so like, I guess like he injected himself with like a Doomsday virus that turns you into Doomsday. And if you let it go too long, it'll actually turn you into Doomsday. You won't have any control. So basically that's what he does. He like he beats up Superman just in time to not turn into Doomsday. And he's like about to Hulk out kind of. This is what it looks like. And then all of a sudden his eyes go back to like Jimmy's little eyes. And then he's like, oh the gee Willikers, Superman. And he actually like hugs Superman as Doomsday, and he like, because he beat the shit out of him. And then that's kind of like the end of that issue, right? Like it just like ends with Jimmy being like, well, that was a crazy day. Then everything just goes back to normal.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So
it was a little odd, but it's a fun throwback.
This is the first issue that you're kind of like, okay, I'm willing to go with it because it's fun. And if you like Jimmy Olsen, this is a fun issue. If you don't like Jimmy Olsen, you probably could skip this one and it would be fine. It doesn't really have anything to do with the story at large. It's just kind of a fun issue. The art's good though. I like the art in this one a lot. So for that alone, it's good.
The next one's really good though. This is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, issue 5 is the one.
Lex basically gets sentenced by some world court or whatever to
right because of his stunt with the blowing up. Or trying to blow up the scientist with the sun.
And everything he's done.
Yeah, and of course everything he's done. But like, yeah, for specifically trying to kill the scientist. And then also no one knows Superman's dying right now except a couple people. Like the Dr. Quintum and Lex obviously knows. And then I think that's it.
Maybe he's his robots. That's about it.
Yeah, And so he can't tell Lois ever right now. So like he was never able to tell her. So and so this issue is about Clark Kent, Superman as Clark Kent going to interview Lex Luthor for an article about like why Lex Luthor, like you're about to be on death row, why would you do all this stuff, and so it's just like a day in the life of Lex Luthor in prison kind of thing. I think it's actually called A Day in the Life or something like that, and so yeah, like it's just Clark Kent interviewing interviewing Lex Luthor, and Lex is being an ass, of course, and being like, "Come on!" And then they know each other from like Smallville, so like they have this whole past. He's like, "Clark, you were always such a an idiot or whatever, and just a simple farm boy." And it's like how can the smartest man in the world not notice that he's Superman or whatever? You know?
Yeah, and the events that transpire in this one are really just like really push that home. It's like,
Yeah.
because Lex keeps bragging about being the smartest, and he's done something that Superman will never realize, but then that Superman will regret, and he's talking about how great he is, and he has like some like floating library thing he made that's like.
Oh, it's kind of like Skeets from Booster Gold, if you know that, but it's like an all-in-one encompassing robot that floats behind you and knows everything about everything. So like you just say like, what about this computer? And it's like, that was this and blah 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 blah. It tells you all the information about.
So yeah, so Clark almost like topples over that or something, and like he causes something that should electrocute him, and Lex is like, "Oh, you almost died," and he's like, "Oh yeah,
you're so lucky, these rubber shoes."
Thank goodness for my rubber shoes.
Yeah, or my rubber soles
Yeah.
on these shoes. It was like, oh, he totally should have died from that. And then there's a lot of stuff like that happens where it's like he should have died, or like Lex is about to get killed, and Superman as Clark Kent just stumbles over and accidentally bullies over the guy that was going to stab Lex or whatever, and he's able to like save Lex's life a couple times in this.
Yeah, there's like some. I guess they're in a facility that houses criminals from around the galaxy.
Yeah,
the only other.
This is. There was one funny part I got to interject real quick where he's like, "You want to know what's real? Feel my bicep," and he like makes Superman feel his bicep because he was like working out, and he's like, "You know what's real? This is real. This is real American muscle or whatever," and he's like, "Feel it. Feel it, Clark. You never felt anything like that in your life, have you?" And it was like so ridiculous because it's Superman like feeling his bicep, and then he has to pretend to be like, "Wow, Lex, that's real good." Like it was so odd and funny. But yeah, anyway, yeah, like more than just humans are in this jail because they bring in the middle of all this, they bring in the parasite, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, where he's on like some kind of dolly, and they're pushing him in, and then the parasite in this he looks like a monster, like kind of like a leech or something.
Yeah, he reminded me of Qbert from the old the Qbert game.
The old game.
Yeah,
but he looked a lot more fucked up than Qbert did.
Well, so he was like an old gruff Qbert.
He looked like Fluke Man from the X-Files.
Okay, that's probably better.
He looks more like that. But sure,
but he knows
Qbert, whatever.
But he knows who Lex is, he's like calling out. He's like, curse you, Luthor.
Yeah. And so like as they're wheeling him through, all of a sudden Parasite starts getting more powerful and more powerful, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's stealing all the prisoners' power or whatever." Like he's just absorbing all their power as they're pushing him through. Why would you push the Parasite through all these people then if you know that he can absorb power even just like from far away or whatever? He's got the Wi-Fi absorber or whatever. But obviously he's absorbing like Superman's power because Superman's in there as Clark Kent, and he's like, he just keeps being like, "So much power," and he's like, "Where is it?" And he keeps like trying to track down Clark Kent, and so eventually it gets out of hand, and Parasite breaks free of everybody, and he's trying to find the power source that's like he's absorbing from so far away. And
it causes like a prison riot.
Yeah, and Clark's like, "Come on, Lex, let's get out of here." And like, so they're running, and basically Lex is like, "I'll show you my secret." And like they go down some stairs, and they take a left, and they go all these places, and then they end up like at the bottom of these stairs, and it kind of looks like hell or something, like they've entered hell. And there's even a lady on a boat who I guess is Lex's daughter, niece. Okay,
yeah. The monster's about to get him right before they go there, and Superman's like, "Oh no, there's an earthquake! He's causing an earthquake!"
Yeah.
And he steps really hard.
Yeah, he's just like shoving his arm into the building, like making it quake or whatever. And then so they get away from Parasite, but then Lex reveals like, oh, he's always been able to get out of here. He just doesn't want to, or chooses not to at this time. And then like, that's it pretty much. He's like, "Niece, take Kent out of here," to write his article. So that's what happens. He writes the article, and that's it. And he keeps saying like, "I know there's good in you," like even though Lex never really shows any good in him at all.
No, he never. Yeah. But he's for some reason he's like, "Oh, why do you do all this, Lex? Like there's good in you."
Yeah, I've always seen it in you. So, and then okay, so we'll say once we get through issue 6, we'll kind of skip ahead because like we said, this is 12 issues, and I know we're going through each one, and it's kind of, but these are like individually cool stories, so we want to hit on these specific ones.
One little tiny thing, it's super tiny, but he's like, let me show you, and they get to the door that the it's like a floorboard that opens up to the stairway down. He's like, hey, you've ever seen something like this? And he's like, you want to meet? He's like, you want to meet Superman? And it's a baboon in a Superman costume.
Yeah. He just has a baboon in a
for some reason. I don't. Yeah, but it was just funny, like a little like. Just 'cause. This is what I think of Superman.
Yeah, and so so the issue 6 is really like the best issue I think in this whole.
It's the most heartfelt, most like.
Yeah,
it's the core of the
issue story. 3. No, yeah, issue 3 and 6 I think are the best issues, because they just have more emotion and whatnot in them. But 6 is all about Clark Kent as a kid.
It's a flashback.
It's a flashback. So he's actually like in high school or just out of high school, I think. Just about to figure out if he wants to go to Metropolis for college or not. And he's like, so he's basically Superboy in this, I think. And he's like, it's basically him getting the chance to actually talk to his dad before his dad dies of a heart attack, which he never got to do when he was younger. So in this, Superman's being kind of like obstinate and like, I don't want to go to the city. I'm scared to go to the city. I don't know. It's so big and what's going to happen. And then he's like, I can just be on the farm. Yeah. I could just.
He's Crypto.
Yeah. That
was fun.
And Crypto comes and out of nowhere and he's like, oh, it's my dog or whatever, And so that's fun. Crypto's in this one. But yeah, he's talking to his dad and his dad's like, I think you should go there, go to the city, Clark. You're like a good kid and, the world needs you kind of thing. And then like while Clark's kind of figuring this all out, he's like, three guys show up and they're like, oh, these are the hired hands that I got to help me do the farm this summer. And Clark's like, well, I could do that by myself in like a day. And he's like, no, I want you to like not be Superman on the farm. Don't be a farm boy. Go to Metropolis and be a journalist and also like save people or whatever. And so like the 3 people that come are like weirdos. Like one of them he's wrapped in bandages, so he looks like the Superman from the unknown Superman that they showed earlier. Then there's another one that looks a lot like. Is that the one that they showed?
Yeah, it's the cow one. But he basically he's like a Mohawky or faux hockey kind of Superman.
Yeah,
look, he's like a hip, strong guy.
Sure, but he looks more like a mix of Lois and Superman. Clark, yeah. And then also. There's like a Mr. Mixelplick, I don't know how you say his name, version of Superman from, the future as well or whatever.
Yeah, like cross-legged and floating on the cloud.
Yeah, they're all like incognito. So they all look like, oh, we're just farmhands, sir. But they obviously look weird and not, not. They all say like, oh, we're from the circus. And, this the guy in bandages, he was in Vietnam. And that's why he's got bandages on. So anyway, like basically it eventually comes out that like, oh, they're from the future and they're Supermen and they came here tracking some monster called I think it's called like the
Carnivirus.
Carnivore cloud or something. It's like a cloud that's in the 5th dimension. So it's really hard to like picture for us, but like basically it's just like floating mouth and brain and like,
and hands and creepy arms or something. It's weird.
And so like they're fighting it and like Superman's like, I gotta help, and the young Superman or the Cal Superman is like, I think you should go like sit this one out. I'm like, nah, we'll take care of it from here.
Yeah, you stay with your dad or whatever.
Yeah, but Superman's like, I don't have time for this or whatever. Like I don't trust you guys, so I'm gonna like fight or whatever. So he fights, and in the middle of this fight, he hears Jonathan Kent's heart stop, and he's like, Dad. And then, like, that's what happened is in Superman's history is his heart's, he missed his dad dying, didn't get to say goodbye or anything because he was fighting this stupid, 5th dimension person that didn't need to be fighting.
Yeah, the cow has a line that's like, I wish he would realize the 3 minutes that it was going to take you to, fight this guy is the 3 minutes that you could have been there to be with your dad at the end.
Well, and it was funny because, like, then it showed the unknown Superman, and he was sitting there walking with Jonathan at the very end. Right before he died, and then he goes to help fight the.
Yeah, and they're obviously talking about like life or whatever.
Yeah, so then, like pretty much everything wraps up. They fight and capture the carnivore thing or whatever, and then so Clark's like, "Thanks a lot, I'm sorry about all this." They go to the funeral and everything, and then the other Supermen are about to leave or whatever, but then one of them, the one that's the unknown Superman, takes off his bandages and turns to Cal and goes, "Hey, thanks for letting me talk to my dad." And it turns out it was actually our day Superman who went back in the past. So he got to talk to his dad before he died, even though when he was a kid, he didn't get to. So it was like a weird time travel episode or issue, but it was like touching. And
yeah, I guess that's why they had the time telescope or whatever. That's like that.
Yeah, they were just setting that up pretty much. So then we get into the part that I'm like, we can cut all of this shit.
The main next part starts off with Superman setting his Sun Eater free. He's like, "All right, I've raised you up. Now go be a Sun Eater in the universe or whatever." Universe. And it's
don't eat any good sons or whatever.
Bye, Superman.
Yeah,
whatever.
It actually does like reach out to
him.
Like,
it's cute. It's like pet. Whatever.
Yeah, and then like randomly Bizarro's planet, the square Earth or whatever, like I guess is sentient, and then starts attacking our planet, and then I don't know. It's weird. And I will say this: I don't care about Bizarro. I hate reading Bizarro issues because I don't know if anybody knows about Bizarro, but basically everything he says is not. It's the reverse of what he says. That is what he means. So if he's like, "I am no like you," that means he does like you. But you have to stop and like I have to think about that every time I read it.
And you have to read it in his voice too. Me, I have no like you, Superman.
And that means I do like you.
And I am the reverse of this because I love Bizarro.
Yeah. So I did not like these. There's 3 issues that he's on like Bizarro World, basically.
I will say that all 3 of them together, I feel like this part is a little too long rereading it now.
And this is where I was like,
been just like one.
If it was one, I might have been okay with it, but they could have just taken these 3 out. And had like something else happen where like he goes away because he's sad about his dad or something, and then comes back 2 months later.
They're trying to do passage of time because of what happens next, and I get that. But yeah, it was like one whole one of like the Bizarro world attacking, one whole one of
him stuck on Bizarro World.
Yeah, and then the third one of him trying to get off. Like that was like all of that. Yeah, I feel like could have been one probably.
And it was basically like Superman gets weakened because on Bizarro World there's like a red sun and. That's it. Like, and so like once he gets on Bizarro Earth, he can't get off of it, and then the only people there are dumb Bizarro people. So he's got to try to figure out how to build a spaceship with dumb Bizarro people.
I do like he figures out how to talk to them though.
Well, he meets another Bizarro who's like the freak of Bizarros,
Zabaro,
and his name is Zabaro, and I don't know if he might be a real guy from the old comics too. I don't know. Grant Morrison might have pulled him out of the 50s or something. So. But he's like the smartest man on the dumbest planet kind of thing. So, and he's like fed up and whatever. But he helps Superman. And that's the other thing. You didn't know if he was good or bad until the very end.
Yeah, the only thing I really did like is that little bit is that's like the funniest part is because he's like, "Oh, Superman, like you're the real Superman. You have no idea how good it is to talk to someone who's like anywhere near like my level of consciousness."
Yeah, like we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We can have a conversation.
Yeah, and then like so they're that goes through and Superman figures out how to get them to help build a rocket ship like the one that he was sent to Earth on to help them escape.
But it's way shittier. I don't even know how this thing actually flew.
I don't know how
it's made of garbage.
I don't know how it
like
flew.
Literal garbage, and somehow it takes off and it flies back to Earth.
Well, that's Bizarro does it somehow, and that's probably why is like it should not have flown.
Yeah,
but I like that. Like so, they're building it.
We have a 50 cents of disbelief in this as well.
It looks like a little dinky rocket like in an old 50s or
like original Voyager,
like when you would see outside of a store a kid
Sputnik.
would put 50 cents in to ride.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Like that exactly.
Like a tin can. Like when you hear Major Tom, like that's what you imagine is he's floating in his tin can.
But I love that they're building it, and like that's what you said. Like we couldn't get a fix on Zabaro because he's like, I see there's only one seat in your spaceship, and we were just talking about how I would love to get away from here because I can't.
Yeah, and I would literally do anything to get off this planet.
Yeah,
and then it's like, no, you can have it, Superman. I'm just kidding. Like,
I was waiting for the turn, and then he's like, nah, it's cool. And then Superman's even though Superman's dying, and he knows it, he's like, I'll come back for you though. Like, it's cool.
It's fine. So, but yeah, so we're skipping through those pretty fast. Because
so he gets off.
He's originally on the planet, and then he's off the planet. So basically, he comes back, and it's been 2 months, and he's like, everybody thought he was dead, and they thought Clark Kent was dead. And I think in that 2 months, also, I can't remember. Yeah, I think in the middle of that, they flash back to Earth, and basically Dr. Quintum tells Lois, "Oh, he is dying. Superman is dying." So she knows he's dying now, and it's like a big thing. And then in the meantime, while he was on Bizarro World, 2 Kryptonian astronauts, don't know if they're original characters or if they're from the 50s as well, but their name is Bar-El and then Lilo, and it's like a dude and his wife, and they're both, or I don't know if they're married, but like they make it sound like they're a couple.
They seem like a couple, yeah.
And they're both wearing like yellow, kind of like Adam Strange suits, but they're a yellow instead of red. And they're like, yeah, we were Kryptonian astronauts that were like
off
planet when it blew up. So we're alive, and we came here, and we took over basically. And so they first make everybody think that they're going to make everything good, and there's like all this like Kryptonian technology everywhere. But then it turns out that they were like actually bad, and they're just going to make all the humans either die or like subjugate them, and then they're going to make new Krypton on Earth, and then Superman talks them out of it basically.
Well, he helps them because like, so they start fighting, and then Superman tries to hide or whatever, and they like see him at the Daily Planet. They like are looking for Superman, and they see him as Clark Kent, and they're like, why don't you come out here? And why are you posing as one of these weaklings? Come out and fight us. And so like they start fighting, and it was cool. They kind of like, the one cool part is that they broke the moon. Superman's like, what the hell?
Okay, that's what happens. So like, so Superman and them are fighting. They throw Superman into the moon. Then they fly up there to get him. And while they're in space, somehow they get radioactive poisoning from kryptonite.
I think so. Like, or maybe
it says when they went through space, they got like through the space waves.
I think it was when they came back through Krypton, because Clark got away before Krypton blew up, and they came back through the like debris of Krypton.
Oh, is that what it was? I thought it was when they went to the moon.
No, I think it was. I think that's what he was saying is, and it didn't like start to affect them until later.
They didn't explain this extremely well, but it happens very fast. It happens within a page. All of a sudden they're fighting, and they're fine, and then the next they're like, "Oh,
I'm falling.
Wrong? Yeah.
What's going on?"
Yeah, and so like they fall to the Earth or whatever, and they crack the moon in half, and then they like repair it by taking all the bridges off the Earth and like staple it back together with the bridges, which is weird, but yeah, sure, why not?
It works.
And yeah, so they're about to die, and Superman's like, "Look, I can help you. I don't want you to die." And so like he's like, "I can basically make you like live in the Phantom Zone, like your souls or whatever will live in the Phantom Zone, and then maybe I can like bring you back some other way, some other time, even though he's gonna fucking die in like 2 issues."
He's making these promises.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. With Zabaro, he's like, "I promise I'll come back for you," as he's like leaving, but it's like, but you're gonna die. So Zabaro's just stuck there, and these guys are just stuck in the Phantom Zone. But he makes it okay because he's like, "Oh, you guys will bring like law and justice in the Phantom Zone because you're
it's
like
criminals, basically,
good Kryptonians, not real criminals." And then Zod and stuff are in there, so that's how he justifies it. So then okay, we're at issue 11 now. All right,
this has my favorite cover.
Which was this cover?
That's the one of him like kind of like floating down in front of like the sun, and in front of the sun, and he's got the Earth like in the palm of his hands. Yes, is really cool.
That is a cool cover. But so this one is about Lex. He's like going in the electric chair, and he's like, fuck all of you or whatever. And they're like, "You're gonna die, you son of a bitch," and like a bit like he's taunting the guy that's on like the switch for the electric chair, and they're going back and forth. And then he was able to sneak in like the serum that Lois got. So they kind of reveal that the reason why in issue 2 that the robot fucked up and left the door open and everything was because Lex had corrupted that robot. So there was a little bit of programming wrong in him, but he was able to get the robot to give him the secrets of that super serum that Lois had for the day. So he takes that, then he gets electrocuted, and he's like, "Oh, I'm all juiced up," or whatever. And he's like, he goes and he like breaks out and he starts fighting, and then he like teams up with some tyrant son that like basically it's like a giant sun that's also a bad guy, and he's got like a big eyeball kind of in the middle of it. And so they're teaming up together, and he thinks, I'm gonna beat Superman,
He goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, and he has a special suit that he made that's going to protect him from like red sun rays, basically.
That's right.
So he puts on this suit, and it's a cool suit. It's all white with like a yellow and red, old school 50s Superman kind of S on it.
Yeah, and I totally like bought it. Like I was like, oh, that's a very cool suit and a very cool way to like fix it or whatever. Like,
so he's gonna go off and fly and fight the sun, and all of the robots are like, we're gonna fight with you because we know you're not doing well. One will stay behind to take care of the fortress. It'll be fine.
Right.
And so they all fly up to fight this tyrant sun.
Yeah, and they start dying, and
it's not going well.
It's not going well. The suit is holding up though, and Superman's able to like beat him, and they're like, how do you have this much like stamina or whatever? Like you should be dying.
I thought because there's a moment too where like they're kind of fighting and Superman doesn't quite have the upper hand, and Superman's like, oh well, he sees something coming, and he's like, oh well, I guess I have like ace up my sleeve kind of thing, and it's his Sun Eater pet.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he's like, crazy sun meets Sun Eater.
Yeah. And it's like a big moment.
Yeah, and engulfs him. And we're like, oh, that's cool. Like it came back to help his papa or whatever.
Yeah, and it's gonna like kill this sun, and then it dies.
Yeah. Then the tyrant sun's like, nope.
Yeah, and it like blows it up, and then that angry Superman, and he's able to like, basically knock the shit out of this tyrant sun, and the sun falls down onto the earth. And it's weird because when he's fighting him, he's all big and shit. But then like when it falls down to the earth, it just kind of looks like a giant, like maybe the size of the Daily Planet.
Yeah.
Planet or whatever, but not as big as I thought it was. As it's coming to Earth, and and it's got like a big eye, and it looks like it's fucking dead, but apparently it's alive because Superman's like, now tyrant sun, we need you because in 400 years you're one of the good guys. So like I know this for a fact because I've looked into the future somehow. With my telescope.
We're gonna rehabilitate you.
Yeah, we're gonna rehabilitate you. So the sun's okay, but now he's got to fight Lex, and that's a pretty badass. Like that's issue 12 basically is him fighting Lex.
He's going to he's like, oh, I gotta fight Lex, but Superman feels something coming on, and he rushes.
Oh yeah, this is where he's like, oh, I'm definitely dying now.
And he rushes back to the Daily Planet as Clark, and he's like. Ends up on the desk, and they're like, "Oh, Clark, where'd you come from?" He's like, "I've got the story of the century," and like hits enter on his computer, and the headline pops up: "Superman's dead," and then Clark falls.
And then Clark falls dead, and they're like, "Clark, what happened?" And they're like, "His heart stopped or whatever." And so yeah, basically they're like, issue 11, Superman / Clark Kent is dead. Then it opens up, and like Clark's talking to his dad in some kind of limbo, and his dad's like, "You're not done yet, son. You can be if you want, but." There was some stuff you could finish if you want. And basically Superman's like, yeah, I got to go finish, what I was doing. So somehow Superman's able to like wake himself up from death just because he talked to his dad or whatever and got inspired. And then he's fighting Lex, and, they're kind of like, they're going at each other. He's able to like go at Lex mainly because like, even though he's weaker, he's got the gravity gun from that like Jimmy had in the fourth issue, and so he's shooting Lex with it, and this was actually like a really smart way to like kill Lex or whatever, because Lex only has 24 hours of super serum, right? Like he drank it, so only 24 hours from when he drank it. So then he shoots the gravity gun at him, and because of Einstein and shit, we know if you're super heavy, if you have a lot of gravity, then time works differently. So basically he shoots Lex with the gravity gun, making him so heavy that time goes by so fast that basically it's like an instant later, and it's 24 hours for his body. And
yeah, they get in like a couple more punches, and then Lex is like, it's cool because the end of it of Lex having the powers is Lex has like this epiphany moment of like true Superman power of like seeing all of the earth and hearing all of the earth and feeling all of power, and he's like, whoa, this is what it's really like to be Superman.
This is what it's like to see, like I can see every atom and every quark and every and then all of a sudden he's like, oh
it's gone,
it went away. So yeah, like basically that's pretty much how he defeats him. And then as Lex is getting put away or whatever, goes back to jail or getting arrested, he like realizes, it shows like his face start cracking with like light coming through.
That's cool.
And he's like, Lois, like it's time or whatever, like I'm dying or whatever. And so like he gets to say goodbye to Lois, which is very heartfelt.
They have a kiss.
They have a kiss.
Sweet kiss.
And then he like flies and he goes into the sun and he just like goes into the sun and this at the time the sun had like, I guess from the explosion that happened in issue 1 was damaged. And so it was like a blue sun now. So like Earth was kind of in jeopardy too, because it didn't have the same light source. And so, so Superman flew back in it to make it yellow again because he was going to explode with his power or whatever. And so,
yeah, and
they didn't explain all of this, but I was willing to buy it because
Lois has like a throwaway line of like, oh, I'm sure he's up there like making like an artificial heart for the sun, and then there's like a panel of Superman like pulling a big lever inside.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Soviet art. Or something, where like there's a man inside of a machine and he's pulling a cog, and but it was like him inside the sun, and he had like overalls on or some shit.
Yeah.
and that's basically how it ends. Like he does die in like, at least in this comic, it makes sense. And he saves the Earth. Now they said like, oh, he's got to. Oh, we also forgot he did save Kandor. Basically, he like it says like this is like in issue 9 or something. He's trying to like do the 12 feats of strength that he was supposed to complete according to Atlas and stuff. They didn't really like number them though, so as a reader I wasn't sure what was a feat and what was just him doing stuff or whatever. And one of the things that I guess wasn't a feat but it was interesting for the Superman lore was he's been trying to figure out what to do with Kandor, the shrunken city, the city that shrunk by Brainiac, and it's the last Kryptonian city. And finally someone's like, why don't you just put it on Mars? Like that way it's got its own planet now. They can live in there. They still have the sun to like use, so they have powers still and everything, but they're not going to like kill humans. So they're like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of this before? He even says, why didn't I ever think of this? I'm like, I don't know, man.
It was cool too because some of them like stayed. That moment was like, so they figured that, and some of them stayed like, we'll try to help you because you helped us, not Superman. And then like go in his body.
They go into people's bodies and they try to like. Well, they go into his body too.
Yeah, they're like, even as fast as we are, we can't repel we can't repair your cells because they're exploding and dying too fast.
Like we're trying to fight your white blood cells and they're not. But they're we can't kill enough fast enough.
But then like you're saying that, and this was a really sweet moment. It was that Superman goes to like one of his like, I guess like his charity kind of things that he does, where he goes to hospitals to say hi to children who are dying. And he's like, this is the last time I'm going to be here for a while, kiddos, but something tells me you guys are going to be all right.
Yeah, and then like he throws his hand, like out of his hands are like all his little Kryptonian buddies that are all shrunk down, and they're like, I guess they're like bio doctors or something. Yeah. Like they'll go inside your body, journey into the, center of your body or whatever. Yeah.
That was kind of cool. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
He saved all them children.
So it ends up like the Kryptons are going to like save all of Earth too. So that's probably one of his feats. They just don't state it like this was number 12 or whatever. So, anyway, so that's the end of it. What did you think about this book, John?
Yeah. Oh, and they allude that the only thing they allude to is like they show Dr. Quintum in the projects thing, and he's like, well, we have this other thing that we've been working on too, and it shows like a big door with the Superman S on it too.
Oh yeah, well because the other thing that they did was we brushed over Kandor, and this was Superman figured out how to mix his genome with human DNA. So it's like, oh, I can have a baby with Lois even if I'm not here. Like, here's my DNA to the Dr. Quintum guy, and then like, Lois, you're here, so inject that into you with a turkey baster or whatever, and then
wow.
I assume that's what he did. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, John. I don't know.
I don't know how they do these things.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I can only imagine. Did Superman jerk off into a cup? Is that what happened, or is he talking about some other kind of DNA? So, anyway. So, what did you think about this?
So on a reread, it's again the point I'll make is that visually, this is still my favorite comic of all time. Like, it is so gorgeous. I love every panel of art in this is so cool and unique and beautiful. Like I said, going through the reread, there are definitely a couple things that you could kind of trim out of this. I feel like you could kind of make a little more concise story with it. But I love it. This is still one of my absolute favorite comics.
It is a great comic. It is definitely a Grant Morrison weird comic. He doesn't hold your hand through it. He expects you to kind of like go with the flow on some of these weird 50s callbacks and stuff that you probably don't know because it's so old and hidden in like continuity and stuff. But if you just kind of go with it and you're like willing to suspend some disbelief and make some logic jumps with Grant Morrison's writing, overall it's like really, really solid. And for me personally, I would just take out 3 issues, and that would be the Bizarro World issues. Like if you just had maybe one, or like that was he goes there and he comes back, and that's like the issue, and it's not like
it could have been one, and like him going there, that time span was the whole one. It didn't need to be 3 episodes.
Right, maybe time goes slower on the square planet, and so he was actually he was only there for, he thought he was, time goes faster on the square planet, so he thought he was there for 10 minutes or whatever, or an hour, but it was actually 2 months on our Earth or some shit like that. They could have made it, because also I think the Bizarro World was flying into like a black hole or some shit, and so whatever. They could have done something like that, but they didn't. So that's my only problem with this, is just like those 3 issues pretty much. But the first 6 are so fucking good. It's kind of like, whatever, I'll go with it. But and like you said, the art is amazing. So if the Absolute is definitely the way to read this book because it's so pretty. But on that note, what would you give this one, John?
Even with the minor flaws, it's getting a 10 for me.
Is it a 10?
It's getting a 10. This is my tenor.
Yeah.
I think this is my first one for this.
Okay. Yeah. So I can't give it a 10. I want to give it a 10, but that Bizarro fucking 3 issues killed me. Just reading all that Bizarro speak. So I'm gonna give this an 8. No, I'm gonna give it a 9 because the art is so fucking amazing. The story, it is one of the best Superman stories you've ever read, and especially like the like heartfelt stuff. Now some of it has been touched on in more recent years with his dad and all this shit, whatever. Like the Superman movie even like does some stuff with his dad that's like, oh, that's that's kind of the same note. So, but at the time, I think this had been like kind of more original, and so yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 9. It's just so solid, and the art's so good, and it's Grant Morrison, kind of top tier Grant Morrison, where he's like still breaking some ground and doing interesting things and bringing back some 50. I like when they bring back some continuity from the 50s that everybody forgot about, but you're like, this is so weird. Where do you come up with that? And it's like some other weird person came up with that in the 50s and he just kind of brought it back. So that's kind of fun, and you get to mess with Jimmy Olsen and stuff again before they were doing that again. So yeah, I get a 9. John, you give it a 10. First 10 from John Johnson. And anything else you want to hit?
No, man, this is good. It's a good one.
All right, on that note, we'll see you guys next time. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.